On this coastline, seawater is transformed by sun, wind, and time into crystalline sea salt.
Sea salt starts with controlled evaporation. As seawater moves through pond after pond, water volume drops.
The harvest has to be shallow, deliberate, and clean. Even before the salt reaches the plant, it is sorted by condition. Crystal size, moisture level. From the salt field, the crystals move fast. Every load is tied to a specific harvest zone and test record.
The factory's first job is simple in principle, but critical in practice. Separate the usable mineral salt from anything too large. Natural salt may be harvested outdoors, but once it enters the plant, control becomes absolute. Washing raw sea salt is a balancing act. Too little cleaning leaves contaminants behind. Too much dissolves the very mineral structure the factory is trying to preserve.
The cleaning stage produces two streams. One is a brighter salt crystal feed. The other is a...
Removing free water now make every later step easier. Drying becomes more efficient. Screening becomes more...
Factory does not wait until the end to discover a problem. It tests continuously, linking every...
This is not full drying yet. It is stabilization. The goal is to make the salt flow cleanly and predictable.
Mechanical cleaning removes the obvious. Optical sorting catches what the eye would miss at full production speed.
Industrial stability often comes from controlled pauses. A buffer silo is not a stop in the
Size matters because it changes how salt moves, dissolves, blends, and reacts. By this point, the factory...
Not all sea salt is identical. Trace minerals can shift from batch to batch depending on source water, weather, and harvest timing. This final drying pass is about control, not aggression. The salt has to leave with the right feel.
What began as seawater is now a measured, cleaned, and stabilized mineral ingredient. Next,
The salt is clean and stable now, but not yet ready for soap formulation. Before it can be blended into the base, this is not about grinding the salt into dust. The factory is aiming for a very specific texture range.
A single pass is rarely enough when uniformity matters. Instead, the factory builds a closed loop.
Modern plants do not rely on occasional guesswork between batches. They measure the material while it is still moving.
At this point, the sea salt has become something much more deliberate. Its natural origin is still there, but its physical behavior. Sea salt is never perfectly identical from one harvest to the next. That is part of its appeal, but in manufacturing, it also has to be tamed.
Soap making is sensitive to water at every stage. Even a small change in moisture here can echo later during...
Traceability follows the ingredient everywhere now. The factory knows exactly where this mineral salt came from, how it was cleaned.
The salt may define the mineral character of the bar.
This is one of the most carefully managed parts of the process. The alkali solution drives saponification.
Inside the factory, this is how sea salt is turned into mineral soap bars.
The oil phase goes in first. Temperature, viscosity, and mass are confirmed before the chemistry begins.
This is the turning point. When alkali meets oil under the right conditions, soap starts to form.
At this stage, the reactor is no longer holding oil in as separate ingredients. It is...
The sea salt enters only after the base has reached the right stage. Too early, and the crystals can...
This is where the process becomes distinctly mineral soap. The sea salt is no longer just a separate ingredient. It is being built. Uniform dispersion matters for more than appearance. It affects hardness, cleansing feel, and the way the bar wears over time.
The batch is beginning to look like soap now, but it is still in an early industrial state. Its chemistry is...
Every stage so far has been building toward control. not us control.
The crystals have crossed the line from ingredient to structure. In the next stage, heat, motion, and chemistry will push
The batch has reached the point where movement itself becomes part of process control. Even a short transfer has to protect heat, texture, and mineral distribution.
Large batches rarely behave the same at the wall and in the center. That is why stabilization matters.
Soap making is a chemical process first and a shaping process second. If the pH drifts here,
Heat is doing more than keeping the soap warm. At this stage, it helps the reaction settle into a controlled rhythm.
Air is one of the quiet enemies of bar quality. Leave too much of it in the batch, and defects can appear much later as
By now, the soap should behave like one integrated material, not oil and alkali, not soap and salt.
Not every mineral soap includes plant extracts, but when they are used, they have to behave like the rest of the process.
Harvested from the coast, the raw sea salt is brought here to the factory, where it is refined and pressed into our signature mineral soap bars.
Color in a mineral soap bar has to feel clean and believable. The aim is not to overwhelm the ingredient story.
The goal here is refinement, not force. A short burst of higher shear can smooth the structure of the batch.
This is the last chance to catch a problem before forming begins. Once the batch leaves the reactor, the process...
From the sun-drenched salt flats to the high-tech mixing vats, we transform raw sea salt into moisturizing mineral soap bars.
A batch this thick cannot simply be dumped. It has to be guided out of the reactor under heat and pressure control.
This filtration step is less about rescuing the batch and more about perfecting it. Anything that could interrupt it.
Between reactor and shaping equipment, the process needs a buffer again. Not to pause the story, but to smooth it.
This last degassing pass is subtle but important. Tiny trapped air pockets can survive surprisingly deep. By now, the soap's chemistry is mostly set. What matters next is mechanics. A well-made soap base can still fail if it reaches the next machine unevenly. So before shaping,
The chemistry stage is nearly complete. Ahead lies the machinery that will compress, refine, and shape this.
From this point on, the process becomes physical. Pressure, vacuum, and precision shaping will take over.
Now the process leaves the reactor behind.
Compression is what turns a stable soap mass into a shape-ready industrial material. The goal is not just force, it is efficiency. This is the last major chance to remove internal air before the bar takes shape. Any bubbles left now can be...
after vacuum, the soap has to be tightened once more. That second compression gives the bar its... For the first time, the soap has a fixed geometry. It is still one endless body, but now it...
Extrusion enough.
Industrial soap bars are often worked more than once. The first plotter creates shape. The second improves texture.
By now, the soap looks far more finished than it did minutes ago. The refining dye is not adding chemicals.
This is the cut that matters for final piece dimensions. Each blank now matches the...
Weight control is not just about labeling. It reflects the stability of the whole forming system. Whenever
The press has to be ready before the first blank arrives. Any flaw in the tooling would be copied bar after bar.
This is the moment the bar truly becomes itself. Compression gives it rounded form, tighter skin, and the...
Branding is more than decoration here. A clean emboss proves that the soap's body, moisture, density, and temperature are...
Fresh from the press, the bar is shaped but still vulnerable. Its surface is smooth, its edges are clean, and its branding is...
Once the tooling is set, production becomes a choreographed mechanical pattern. Each press stroke repeats the same geometry.
The bars are formed but they are not finished yet. Right after pressing, the surface still needs time to...
A bar can look perfect at a glance and still fail at the edges. The soap now has its final shape, but shape alone is not enough. In the next stage, the bars will cool.
The bars are shaped now, but they are still warm from compression. Inside the cooling tunnel, the factory begins tight.
Cooling is never just about temperature. It is about how heat leaves the bar, where it leaves first, and how evenly.
Bars cool differently on each side if the process is not corrected. The bottom face has less exposure at first, so the tunnel compensates.
Material bursted in. If the surface hardened too quickly, the bar can trap instability inside. So after cooling begins,
The bar does not need to be fully hard yet. It only needs to be developing on schedule. That is why the factory measures.
Pressing creates the shape, but finishing refines the look. This light mechanical cleanup removes the tiniest traces of...
A premium finish depends on detail. Even a flawless stamp can look poor if dust settles.
At this speed, visual quality has to be automated. Every face, every edge, every logo is checked as the bar.
The bar may have passed earlier checks, but cooling can still change dimensions slightly. That is why the
A bar can look perfect and still fail structurally. That is why the line checks for defects that hide below the surface.
Top surface quality matters, but a finished bar has 6 visible sides. This station checks everything the customer might handle later.
Even when nothing is rejected, the reject system still has to stay ready. A production line depends on the certainty.
Once the bars are stable enough to handle, packaging begin. But even here, the process starts with alignment.
Packaging adds more than protection. It adds presentation, traceability, and the final branded identity the customer will see.
This is where the packaged bar first appears. The soap disappears inside a protective branded sleeve of film.
Once the cross seal closes, the product becomes a retail unit. The bar is protected, identified, and ready to move beyond soap. A good wrap has to look right and hold right. Seal inspection verifies both at once.
That small printed code carries the whole story of the bar. From coastal harvest to final wrap, every stage is linked through it.
Once the bars are individually wrapped, the line begins thinking in groups instead of single units. Packaging now shifts.
The mineral soap bar is no longer just finished. It is now wrapped, coated, and ready to be packed for sale.
By this point, the product is no longer handled as individual bars. The line moves them in counted groups, ready for retail display.
A sealed carton protects the wrapped bars inside from handling damage and contamination. It also creates the first grouped packaging has to be just as exact as the individual bars inside it. A correct carton weight confirms that counting, loading, and sealing all happened properly. Retail cartons are only one level of packaging. For storage and shipping, the factory needs a stronger outer container.
Before the cases can be filled, their base has to carry the load. That may seem simple.
Automated case loading reduces handling and keeps the pack pattern exact. The cartons arrive inside the case already aligned.
Once the top seam is sealed, the case becomes the dominant shipping unit. Inside it are many finished bars.
The shipping label is the warehouse language of the product. It tells distribution systems what the case contains.
Sorting at the case level is where manufacturing hands off to logistics. The product is still traceable by batch.
Once the cases are routed, they need a stable base for storage and shipment. That base is the pallet.
Palletizing is more than stacking boxes. It is engineered load building. The pattern determines how the entire shipment will survive storage, handling, and transport.
Interlayer material may seem minor, but it helps large pallet loads stay stable. As stacks get
By the end of wrapping, the pallet behaves like one object instead of many stacked cases. That is, at last, the product leaves the line itself. What started in seawater ponds has become a wrapped, coated, and
Bird. The bars are packed, boxed, labeled, cased, and palletized. Inside this warehouse, sea salt has fully Before any pallet can leave the building, the warehouse verifies its identity one more time. This final scan connects.
Production may be finished, but logistics still follows strict order. Loads are grouped by route. Movement in the dispatch zone is all about order. Each pallet now travels as part of a larger shipping pattern.
Even fully wrapped and boxed products still depend on the condition of the vehicle that carries them. A poor trailer can... This is the final major transfer of the product. For the first time since the salt ponds, the load is leaving one...
Truck loading is part engineering and part logistics. The arrangement inside the trailer affects stability on the...
Packaging protects the product, but transport protection depends on the full load. Once the truck moves, every pallet has...
The physical load is only half the shipment. The other half is documentation. Without it, the product cannot move. Once the trailer is sealed, the shipment becomes a controlled outbound unit. Everything inside now travels under the chain of custody.
For the first time, the product is leaving the facility entirely. What began as harvested sea salt is now moving out.
Once the soap bars are sealed, they arrive at the distribution center, where our team ensures every shipment matches the delivery record before unloading.
Even after shipment, careful handling still matters. The pallets may be complete, but they are still...
The product has changed hands, but not lost its identity. Every pallet remains fully traceable.
Bulk shipping format is efficient for transport, but retail needs a smaller scale. This is where the product begins.
The scale changes again here. What left the factory as pallets now heads towards stores in smaller route loads. After the factory, the truck, and the warehouse, the product finally reaches the store. Now the process becomes visible to shoppers. This is the moment the industrial process becomes a retail product. Every step inside the factory now resolves into a bullet. After all the machinery, logistics, and inspection, the final act is remarkably simple. A person reaches for the...
From the outside, the product looks simple. But inside that clean retail package is a long chain of harvesting.
What started in coastal evaporation ponds now sits finished, packaged, and ready for everyday use. But to
Uncertain. Seen all at once, the process looks almost impossible. A natural mineral harvested from seawater.
The journey starts outside the factory. Sun, wind, and shallow pond design concentrate seawater until... Natural salt is only the beginning. Before it can enter soap making, it has to be cleaned, balanced. Inside the reactor, the process changes from material handling to chemistry. Oils, alkali...
Once the chemistry is complete, mechanics take over. Pressure, vacuum, cutting, and molding turn a dense...
A shaped bar still has to become a stable one. Cooling and inspection lock in the finish and reveal hidden defects before they can travel.
Packaging protects, identifies, and organizes the product. It also carries the entire manufacturing history forward through codes.
Even after production ends, control continues through transport and retail handling. The bar remains tracked, protected. Inside the package is the final result of everything the factory did. A solid mineral soap bar with controlled...
At close range, the quality of the process becomes visible. Smoothness, edge definition, and embossed clarity.
The bar returns to water at the very end of its journey. But now it meets water not as raw sea. The difference between raw ingredient and finished product is now unmistakable. What began as loose coastal mineral crystals has become...
From start to finish, each stage prepared the next. The process was never random and niche isolated. It was one...
Every finished unit carries more than a brand. It carries a traceable history of harvesting, formulation, packaging, and movement.
The whole journey lives inside this landscape.
sea, salt field, factory.
After all the machinery, the product ends where it was always meant to end, in a person's hand. That is the scale the entire industrial chain was built to serve. The beginning and the end are made of the same mineral story. What changes is form, control, and function.
Raw salt, finished bar, retail package. The entire process can now be seen in a single frame.
After harvesting, refining, reacting, shaping, cooling, packing, and shipping, this is what remains.
This is how sea salt is turned into mineral soap bars inside a modern factory. From coastal crystals to finished